So welcome everyone to this very exciting free educational series. This month, we are already in the month of September. We already had 4 successful webinars in the last couple of months, and there will be more exciting ones coming up. So get comfortable, get settled here, and we'll get started in just a second with introductions. Okay. All right. Just in interest of time, let's get started. So I officially would like to welcome everyone to this webinar. I'm thrilled to have you all here today, joining us from, I know, various parts of the world, which is even more exciting. My name is Sophie Bowles, and I'm a positive media psychologist working as a director of research here at the Digital Wellness Institute, and I'm also an associate professor at Chapman University in Orange, California. And I'll be your host for this fireside chat today. Today, I am very excited to welcome Dr. Omneya Omar for our monthly free educational event series, talking about her research and experience on the cost of our global digitization of our lives and its effects on well-being and happiness. Dr. Omneya Omar is a well-being facilitator and consultant for government well-being projects and has more than 15 years of experiences across the UAE, Egypt, Kuwait, and KSA in supporting and enhancing societal well-being. Her doctoral research focused on the policy implementation framework of the National Program of Happiness and Wellbeing across top-rated higher education institutions at the UAE. Her research focuses on positive psychology and subjective well-being across the business and education sector. She has been privileged to watch the early birth of the UAE Happiness and Wellbeing National Program in 2016, which also informs her current work, which she's about to share with us today. So what we're doing today is really zooming out, and instead of looking at digital wellness on an individual level, we're looking at it from a societal and international perspective. Dr. Omar is sharing her expertise on digital wellness as it applies to the UAE context by exploring the questions of whether the promise of happiness can still be upheld in an age where government is fully digitized, and how a model of digital wellness can support the achievement of UAE's goals for digitization and happiness. We will explore what we can learn from a digital strategy on a governmental level and its impact for our well-being, and apply it to our own, maybe to other national contexts, and maybe even break it down to what that means for us at workplaces or our institutions. We will give Dr. Omneya the floor to provide us with an introduction into her work and experience, and then chat about her research and experience for about 30-40 minutes, and then leave the last part of the webinar open for questions from you. You may not be able to answer all of the questions, but we're trying to get to all of them. So feel free to put the questions in the Q&A section of this webinar anytime that a question arises. With that said, I would like to give the floor to Dr. Omar.
Thank you, Sophie. Good morning and good evening, everyone, everywhere. So yeah, it's you're introducing me, and I remember the whole journey. And definitely, I'm one of the lucky people that have seen the rising and of the Happiness and Wellbeing program in UAE. I remember, of course, I'm one of the expats. I'm originally from Egypt, and I came to UAE 7 years ago. By that time, I was still in progress of my doctoral research from Lancaster University. And I've already finished my master's, and I've dedicated big time for studying resilience in the workplace and how it could impact and support us during our adversity times. And then I found myself in a country that is setting a minister's state of happiness in 2016. I was like, okay, wow. The beauty of the UAE, which we'll come to again over in my discussion, is that there's always a theme for every year. And by that time in 2016, the theme of the year for the country, as it's declared by the president of the country in the beginning of every year, like January of every year, that this year will be the focus of the whole country is on a specific theme. So by 2016, it was the happiness and positivity, and then came tolerance, and then came others, like moving to, at the moment, the main theme is sustainability. And the UAE actually this year is hosting the COP28 for climate change. So with a country that brings a theme to everyone on it, you find that research, education, every industry in the society are all focused on that theme, how they can maximize the work on that theme. And I moved with that flow, and I decided that, well, I'm going to do and focus my research on, can really happiness be seen as a societal concept? It's not just individual happiness. It is not just what matters for me. And can it be sustained? So that brought me from moving from the typical individual happiness sense of how to be happy, or the typical laughters. People think that when you're happy, you always have a big smile and you're always laughing, which doesn't really make sense. So moving to the actual sense of subjective well-being. And by that time, I was working also as director of positive education in one of the schools. So I met different stakeholders. I met the parents, the teachers, which for them, this is their workplace environment. So I had this sense of checking how implementing a subjective well-being plan on a societal level, on a national level, moving from a school, which is a small or a micro institution, how is it being implemented through the vision of the higher education and the Ministry of Education on a higher level, up to fulfilling the government. And it was really impressive. I will take you through some of the initiatives that came through and hit my research. Then moving to COVID, and then shifting my more focus onto the digital wellness. So I would consider that this is more of an introduction, and then we can start by the serious talk.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So I would say that in 2016, the UAE have hired or have appointed the Minister of Happiness. And by that time, the Minister of Happiness, Her Excellency Ahoud Rumi, she was included for a task to harmonize all government plans, programs, and policies to achieve a happier society. Now, one distinguished thing about this appointment is that there is no Ministry of Happiness in the UAE. It's a Minister State of Happiness that oversee implementation of subjective well-being and positivity across every minister in the government, across every ministry in the government. So it's not like an isolated ministry that is working on itself. It's just like interconnecting with every ministry, ensuring that every policy on a societal level is enhanced by the positivity and national well-being of the society. By that, they have set what they call as the National Program for Happiness and Positivity, and it was presented and approved in 2016. Moving deeper in 2017, you started to find the country is bringing more manuals, policy manuals. So they became a UAE government policy manual, and it merged the science of happiness with government policy creations. There were like manual model happiness should be a component at every level of policy decision making. And the guide has also explained the role of the primarily chief happiness and positivity officer in every government entity. That was a new title that was added, which works parallel with the human capital department on ensuring that like there is the ambassadors. These are like the happiness ambassadors in every government entity. And of course, in parallel, private institutes also started to appoint on a parallel level the same position. Now, again, it felt like everyone is just going into the policy, buying into the policy and the vision of the country. They have to be part of it, and they want to be part of it. And through my research, I was checking and studying how far the implementation is really landing on the main stakeholders, which is the individuals. I mean, in the education, when it comes to the students, or in the workplace, when it comes to the employees, the main final stakeholder, I would say. Are they really understanding the concepts and the new concepts of the subjective well-being as it informed? Is it really serving them as it's expected, and how it's affecting their productivity, the turnover, the level of absenteeism, and all the other factors upon which we see if the program is really, as it says, capturing the KPIs. So moving forward, by 2017, as I was saying, they developed the happiness policy manual, and it was addressed across all the main industries in the society: the economic, the business, the health, the education, and the government services. And then until in 2018, the UAE was ranked as the happiest country in the Arab world and the 20th happiest country globally in the World Happiness Report. Even the UAE has hosted the Global Happiness Summit at some point. It was a big event to be hosted in one Arab country, I would say. And it was published and wrote, I think it was in 2019 also, it was there. So all of this, actually, it's archived, and you can see it in websites that the UAE have set. Like, for example, you have the happinessagenda.ae. You can see in it all the initiatives. You have the National Program of Happiness and Wellbeing initiatives in the UAE on one government portal that also document all of that. Now, after this saturation that I would say that reached, or the implementation of the policy, by 2019, it became to be focused more on the digital well-being. And the first initiative that was done by the country had a focus on the child digital well-being. So by this time, the concept of digital well-being was mainly to ensure cyber security, like to ensure that children, when they are safely utilizing their tablets or the internet, they are safe, giving tips to parents, to families, how to ensure that their children are protected, and how to ask for help if they found any cyber hazardness that they are facing. So I would say it was more still of the simple concept of the digital wellness, not as we're reaching now for a bigger model or a more holistic model. And then 2019, where COVID-19 hits the world. And it was a time which I think every researcher in the discipline of subjective well-being was asking, will the world be still the same? Will people be back into subjective well-being? Are we going to be well?
Right.
And it was a time, very challenging. Surprisingly, the UAE continued its initiatives, and the Minister of State of Happiness started to revisit the initiatives in a way that helped the full digitalization that started to happen slowly in the society. And also by that time, the society have shown many digital initiatives, because there was the agenda of digitalization of the UAE. So you do have the launching of smart government, you have the digital identity, the e-government services. With all this digitalization that is happening everywhere in every industry in the whole government, it was very important to see can still, as I say, the hope or the promise of happiness that started in 2016 in the UAE still be maintained as it was set and as it was expected, or it's not, or it would need or require some changes, if I would say.
Just kind of quickly jump in here because you already tapped into a lot of really interesting concepts, and just to think about how, you know, from obviously the UE perspective, I think other countries could really learn a lot too. So I'm kind of curious to get your take on a little bit of the structural ways in which you feel like the UE did really well in really fulfilling the goal of increasing that societal well-being, and how they did so with not the challenge obviously with COVID, but then with that also the digitization that came along with that.
Right. I think the best part of the UAE is that they heavily depend on research, and they heavily ensure that there is also always a cultural contextualization to whatever concept they are trying to apply in the society. The UAE is a society with a very diversified nationalities. Like, it's mainly depending on expats with different nationalities besides the UAE nationals. So to ensure that when you are giving a new trend, and as I said in the beginning, setting a theme for every year, a theme of focus, this is definitely enhanced by heavy research to ensure that whatever policy that is being implemented, it will reach to the minimal, to their most societal level applicable for all the nationalities and all the inclusiveness that comes in the diversity. It will be very hard if these things were not researched well, I would say. So the concept of, I would say, the agility of the government to set policies and to revisit it and to give it a time frame every now and then, I think this is what made them be able to fit and to imply a program as a national program of happiness overall, holistically, to the whole country, and even keep moderating it and remodulating it to fit with the digitalization challenges and setting the digital expectations to move with the flow with the whole world, because the whole world now is calling for digitalization. There is no escape. So yeah, the answer would be the research.
Well, and I think actually in your answer was even a lot more, which is something that I think a lot of governments can probably really learn from. I mean, agility in a government is probably something we wouldn't necessarily expect so much, but you say basically the success of a successful implementation of like a well-being strategy that takes into account also the digitization requires a government to be flexible and to create plans, policies, try them out, see how it works, and then adapt, and then redo that over and over again. So really kind of this almost research and development part that we know just from, you know, creating businesses is something that applies on that governmental level as well, which is really interesting. And the other thing that you said that I also really liked was the cultural adaptation, and that basically an initiative like this only works if it is inclusive. And that's where that research component comes in, where we need to know, okay, who is basically our target audience and how do we really make it inclusive for everyone so that it sticks, so people actually engage in practices.
Exactly. And I would add also that I have seen in most of my research, when I'm looking for the initiatives, it's always connected. Like, it's not concerned with one minister only. Like, for example, when the hosting the digital safety for children. That was a connection between the Ministry of State of Happiness and the Ministry of Interior to ensure the cybersecurity. And there is always different stakeholders that know how to synchronize and work effectively to ensure that a policy or an initiative would come to light. Not one single owner, it's something that everyone, it's teamwork. I would say it's more of a teamwork that I can see.
That's really great. Can you talk a little bit more about the digital wellness, or how maybe successful, not successful, or where the UAE is right now in terms of its implementation for really more of a digital wellness strategy? I mean, you talked about the cybersecurity for kids. Was there anything beyond that? Anything maybe other countries could learn from and think about as well?
Yeah, I would like also to highlight the effectiveness of the digital citizenship. Like if we will talk about the flourishing wheel, the digital flourishing wheel that the Digital Wellness Institute is owning, I see that the digital citizenship also the UAE has played a very good role in. And they even have set a website that is called the UAE Digital, let me get you exactly the right one, digitalwellbeing.ae. And if people logged into that one, they will see that there is a kind of a declaration of digital citizenship that you as a citizen of UAE, you declare maintaining positive values, positive attitude, utilizing the internet for good purpose, and respecting the boundaries and the safety of other users. It was like, for me, it was like, wow. It was okay. It's like, so I think that this is, again, it's a very strong initiative. The only thing is that it is made in a sense of education, and it's more directed towards children in schools. So I think there still needs to be more effort to be done to reach more employees and adult sector, I would say, not only educational and school sectors. However, if I would say, like, because nothing is always perfect, I do think that with the high expectations and the high competitiveness in the UAE, still there needs to be work on the relationships and the communication impact, the digital effect on the digitalization. Like there was one research, and it's stating that again 75% of employees that was interviewed of a sample of 1,000, if I recall, can say that they cannot take off their phones from their hands. Like they have the phone habit all the time, especially working phones all the time, in-house, out-house, driving, everywhere. So because the UAE is a country that has very high sense of productivity, and there is a lot of expectations, work is taken very serious, especially when it comes to private institutions, and it's a non-stop, if I would say, from a personal experience, I would say. So I think, like many other countries, they have fallen in the trap of working flexibly from home, but at the end of the day, it's not adding anything to your well-being, because you are connected everywhere and every time. So I'm assuming that there will be more focus, although they, for example, the UAE have set a year ago, the 4.5 working week, 4.5 days working week. So now the working week is 4 days and a half day, to ensure people have more of a work-life balance and spending more time with their children. Even the schools also now are working 4.5 days. Yet you see that there is still the mix of, okay, it's a 4.5 day, but you work and you open and access everything from your mobiles and the emails. And if you're having projects that you need to work on, so still that part, I think it needs more work to impact, to to do better for the relationships in the society, especially expats.
Yeah. Wow, that's so interesting. So, I mean, yeah, I'm really impressed with what the government is even thinking about, and then what they're really working on. Focusing on digital citizenship in today's day and age is obviously so important when we think of not only online privacy and how to keep our data safe, but also how to interact with each other that doesn't lead to increased polarization, which is obviously an issue we see a lot in the US. And actually create inclusive spaces where constructive conversations and discussions can happen to move issues and problems forward. And so, however, you mentioned the issue that the initiative that is in place in the UAE has focused mainly on kids. So how do you think, what is the strategy, and maybe you already thought about that from a government perspective, one could take to actually now reach a more adult or working population, or how would you kind of go about that?
I'm assuming that the government can set the limiting hours of online policy, like to ensure that this is connected with the labor law. That to ensure that there is a maximum hour of online utilization, and that the employee have the right to shut off the phone and the mobile and the laptop after the working hours. To be honest, like through my experience, and because I've been training and coaching in a couple of government entities for mental well-being. These initiatives are set but within the government itself, from within the entity itself, not still on an overall policy initiative. But I think that a government as agile as UAE is capable of setting clear statements that to ensure, even for the private entities, that there need to be a limitation and need to respect the actual working hours of the employee. And in case of extra working hours that is expected, it would be regarding clear increments or incentives that the employees apply or accept based on their acceptability, not that they have to finish the task regardless of what. Mm-hmm. That would be one thing, a policy.
Right. And so now I wonder, because as far as I know, France and Germany, right, have implemented that policy to not, you don't have to, or not supposed to really even, check your emails after work hours. Do you have any knowledge in terms of how effective this is? Is there already data out there from those countries that show maybe the effectiveness of this?
I think I've read a report recently, but I can't recall much the data, but I do think that it have shown some effectiveness, I would say. Like it is working. And I do really think that a country as UAE, always pioneering with its human initiative trends in the Arab world, I'm sure that they can start with this initiative and check and measure, because it will have its effect on the overall mental health and well-being of the society.
Yeah, I mean, we can obviously, from the data that we have, infer that it will be beneficial. I was just curious, because this would be obviously also a really fascinating research study, and I'm sure there are researchers that work on that within those countries. We opened this kind of question up here also for the panelists, in terms of if there's any other, not panelists, sorry, webinar attendees here that also live in a country that have a right to disconnect policy. If you want to chime in here or have any questions about that, we would love to hear from you.
The thing is, sorry, Sophie, to interrupt. The thing is that also I want to say is the nature and the demographic of the UAE society, it's mainly depending on millennials. And so I wonder, like the generation itself that is actually like born connected to devices. Even if they got the right to disconnect, will they be disconnecting or not? Just that's one thing. It's because again, the millennials have the tendency to, they're more competitive. They want to finish their tasks regardless of, even if they will be set into like, you have the right to pause and to stop. Will it be really effectively like from the individual choice itself? So I think also the good thing that is happening in the UAE, that they are setting it for the children education, because this is the growing generation. When the growing generation have embedded within their curriculum to understand the impact of digital well-being and digital citizenship and how it's impacting their relationships and communication, that ensure that in the next years they will be well-educated, digitally educated generations that know how to deal and how to balance. If it was already blended from their early education years, I would say.
Yeah, totally. And then those will be people that will be in leadership positions and then impact whole work cultures. And it can obviously bring it even up to governmental level. So yeah, absolutely. Which then makes sense that the UE is actually focusing, obviously, specifically first and foremost on the education sector. Yeah, children. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah. What are some other things you've learned in your research that you feel like might be interesting for kind of an international audience to hear regarding digital wellness and how the government is affiliated with that?
So I mean, basically it's about the one thing also is that I've noticed since now it's very trending in the UAE now. All the research is concerned with sustainability. So I wanted also to see the connectedness between sustainability and climate change initiatives and digital wellness. And it was pretty clear that there is definitely an interconnectedness, because when we're talking about sustainability and climate change, it requires the efficiency in power and in energy and in the material. So it is, as I'm saying, impeccable that digitalization needs to continue being implemented heavily everywhere. And climate change is a global initiative. And so both of them to ensure, while we are working on the digitalization, the impact on digital wellness is a must, because if we continued heavily investing into the digitalization without ensuring and maintaining the human well-being, it will be like we're adding value somewhere and focusing on a strategy while the other part is just like, it's like falling. So this balance is very important. And I think I didn't find much research, and this would be something I would like to research more about, connecting the digital wellness to the climate change initiatives and sustainability.
Wow, I love that. That makes total sense. And yeah, I don't think I've seen that either. Why do you think maybe there is no research out there yet on that topic?
I think because the digital well-being in itself is still a fresh stream, and I think now it's still getting into the context. And I'm sure that there has to be more research and studies that is setting the connectedness. Like maybe there is some research about overall well-being, but it's still not connected to the niche part of digital wellness. So I think I see it more of like, like a triangle, like digitalization, climate change, and sustainability. There has to be the digital wellness as an aiding factor for both to be working simultaneously and effectively.
Yeah, That makes sense. And on that topic, there is a lot of conversation about digitization and the smart cities movement, but how can we make sure that cities are wise with their digital wellness policies and not just smart? And this is Amy actually that raised that question.
I like that. I like that. Yeah, thank you for asking that, because as you know, Dubai, for example, is having the Smart Dubai initiative, smart cities. And the e-government services. So I think, yeah, so far the government is working smartly, but the wiseness would come from, it would really come from setting the balance, or making sure that as long as we are working smart with the city model, thinking of the human mind and the ecosystem. I think it's about the ecosystem. So I think maybe utilizing the quantified self, I would say, utilizing it for the benefit of the society, not utilizing the data in a way that would really be more for sense of commercializations.
Right.
I think it's a question that really I would like to dig more about. I like the concept. Wise cities, not smart ones.
Right. Well, and like what you brought up here is with designing for efficiency and productivity and kind of ease of going about things, we cannot lose sight of the human, as you said. So we cannot lose sight of also the emotional well-being and health and mental health that comes along with that, because not everything, just because it's like faster or more efficient or leads to higher, you were talking also commercialization isn't necessarily helpful for our emotional and mental well-being. So keeping that human at the center is probably a really good recommendation. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. If you could imagine 10 years forward, what would you imagine a digitally well world could look like practically?
Okay, that's a very coaching question, Sophie, because I do some coaching as well.
Yes, so, again, this is an Amy question. Yeah. And please, the audience, chime in here with questions as well, so feel free to ask.
Okay, thank you, Amy, for that question. Thank you. Okay, 10 years from now, a digitally well society, I think it's a society that managed to have the right amount of emotional awareness and mental awareness of how to balance between being agile and responsive to the digital world, because we have to move with the flow, but at the same time know when to press the stop and the pause button. Like there are two buttons, like there is the stop and there is the pause. So in every aspect. So when it comes to work, I know how to have full efficiency and knowledge and literacy of digital technology that helps in my work in different fields. But at the same time, it is not impacting my mental health and my well-being and my family connections. To strike this balance on an automation level, when you reach a point that this is happening on an autopilot, this is what I would say as a digitally well society.
Nice. I really like that. There's some questions coming in here from the audience. One was from Reham, and he asked, what is a digital wellness scope? Is it different for females? Not sure if you can.
Yeah.
Reham
is a she, not a he.
Sorry, did I say that?
No worries.
Sorry.
No worries. It's an Arabic name. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's asking about the
What
funnel.
is digital wellness scope? Is it different for females?
Um, I don't think so. Digital wellness scope is a human-centric scope, males and females. Because when you look at the aspects, it's aspects that's fulfilling the whole society, the relationship, the communication, the citizenship. So I don't think that there will be a specific, I would say, recognition for gender perspective. It's more of the human, I would say.
Yeah, I'll probably sign that.
Yeah.
There are some questions in the Q&A. Unfortunately, I can't open this. I'll have Amy chime in here. Yeah, Amy, go
Dr.
ahead.
Omar, one of the questions that's come up in Q&A is from Jamie Price, and says some of the global companies are going through return to office efforts. This hybrid model, how do you think that this will impact digital well-being and also workplace satisfaction? Do you have any guidance for groups that are overseeing this hybrid working model?
Right. Yeah, as I said, that actually in the UAE now, they have set the 4.5 days working days week. So in that time, from Monday to Thursday, they're working from office, and Friday they're working online. So I think that actually most of the government entities in the UAE are applying the hybrid model. Some private entities maintained working all the days from office. I do think that it will affect the digital wellness in a way. And not all of it will be cons, like some of it will have its pros, because maybe when there is the going back to office, however, with the need of, again, the disconnection right policy to be in hand, I think this should maintain or affect the communication and the family relationships more positive. If work will be at work and then you're just back to home with where it is home, not where you're still on your laptop and connected for a Zoom meeting or a mobile meeting. And let me tell you a personal story of that one, if I could share. At some point, I made a car accident, which I had by that time my car total loss, because I was on one of those online meetings. And by that time, I realized that it's really a trap. It makes it easier that, I'm going to join online. I'm just listening to the other stakeholders while they're talking. But no, because I'm listening and I'm fully focused, and I wasn't focused on my road. So I think I learned my lesson about the need of digital wellness and digital education by heart, So yeah, it might have its pros, I would say. Some people won't agree with me, but I think bringing back work to work and home to home might be a better solution, might be.
Thank you. There's another question in the Q&A I'm just going to raise to you here by Sood, and they are asking, what steps has the UAE taken toward children's digital safety? Have they worked with tech companies in implementing restrictions for minors?
Okay, so I think that yes. First, the initiative of the child safety, as I said, it was an initiative set from the Minister State of Happiness and the Ministry of Interior, and it aimed to raise the awareness and limit the risks of the digital world. So that included training workshops for parents, supporting platforms, interactive camps, And also there were tools that were provided, which I think with connection and working with IT and telecommunication industries and information technology, even in schools, because most of the schools here in the UAE have iPad dependency and digital education part of the classroom. So yes, of course, on the webs in the schools, the Wi-Fi is connected to like a closure of specific websites and ensuring that all the portals that the students are receiving the education and educational apps are kids friendly, and they are blocking any hazardous information or channels that can be connected to the school Wi-Fi's. So definitely there is a joint efforts here.
Great, thank you. We still have some time for other questions from the audience, so please feel free to put them in the Q&A. But I'm gonna ask one, which I feel like is already a nice kind of finishing question, and then you're welcome to also share any last points that you have on your mind. But Amy, again, raised this really wonderful question that I feel like really sums up this webinar nicely. If other countries want to kickstart their digital wellness in their country, where would you recommend they start?
Yeah, I think it's education. Through education. Parallel between schools education and higher education. It needs to be like embedded, like an embedded curriculum. And let me give you another example about that. There was one of the other initiatives that the UAE wanted to implement was moral education. And I'm giving this example because in moral education, when it came across as piloting, they implemented it across all the grade levels of education in schools on 1 year as a pilot study, and the next year they moved to the higher education. So I think this is an example of how you can embed an education system parallel to the national curriculums on a grade level perspective. So they gave specific modules and specific focus for every age group. Like, for example, if we're going to talk applying this back to digital wellness, there will be some topics that are more relevant to elementary children. There will be other topics that will be definitely more connected to high school students and their challenges and their internet usability, and for college students to prepare them for, because those will be to prepare them for the workforce. And then they will be preparing for, they will also starting their families, assuming once they join the workforce. So I think there has to be the start from the education sector, both higher education and schools.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense, and really have a strategic plan across all grade levels, as you said.
Yeah.
Nice. Thank you. What are some other last points that you want to share with our audience here today?
I really would like to share that the digital wellness personally for me was more of connecting the dots between many years I spent reading in science of happiness and well-being and the digital era. Like, because back years, most of the well-being initiatives were talking about maintaining mental wellness and physical wellness. And then I find everything around us is digitalizing. And I find that, for example, even if I speak from a personal level, the children don't take off their hands from the iPads and the laptops and the screens. So with all this digital revolution coming in, I was starting to lose the hope of maintaining the well-being promise. But digital wellness is really like the the connectedness and the connection between moving forward with digitalization and maintaining the well-being. And I think it is one stream that even there's a lot of fears worldwide about artificial intelligence and how artificial intelligence can take or can steal the human role. But it is about, with digital wellness and ensuring and raising the awareness and education into that field, I think we still can maintain strongly our the human sense that cannot be beaten by any artificial intelligence.
Wow, I really like that. And thanks for bringing in really the artificial intelligence aspect, because that is not going away, right? This is just going to continue the conversation. And so, as you mentioned already throughout our conversation today, we cannot forget the human really in all of it. So yeah. This is amazing. So appreciative of your time today, your expertise. This was an amazing perspective from a government perspective that I think we can learn from all other countries a lot from, and we can see how it can be successful, as the UAE really shows, which is just really gives us, at least me, a lot of motivation and hope to continue pursuing this digital wellness journey here for individuals and on a global and societal level. So I really appreciate and thank you for very much your time. I'm going to share just quickly here with everyone else our upcoming webinar in October. Here we have Stephen Michael Crane, a Stanford researcher, talk about finding your workflow. So please join us here next month, October 11th at 9 a.m. So with that, I thank you all very much and hope we'll see you all again soon.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sophie and Amy, and looking forward to see you the next chat I'll be joining.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Have a good day.
Yeah, so nice to see you. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.